Hi everyone, it's your boy Hardcorn here, and we're going to talk about Kamimura Maika. We're going to be looking at her skills, supporters, and if she's worth your gems in the first place. Maika sure is an experience to play. She has incredible power but is offset by the way her skills are set up and also her basic attack. It's often I see people having buyer's remorse when they get her because of her janky basic attack and long starting cooldowns. Maika has what I lovingly call Ingrid syndrome, where the character has a powerful but janky basic attack and incredibly powerful low cooldown skills. It takes some getting used to and also sparing use of the basic attack. Well, let's get into this basic attack. Maika fires a single powerful rocket that travels at a decent speed. The speed is not fast enough to snipe faraway targets. You'll have to lead the shot or get closer. She cannot fire more than one projectile unless she has both parts of her Taimanin art. Smaller, more agile enemies can just sidestep an entire rocket. Worst thing is that these may be rocket rounds, but their explosion radius is super tiny. It's an odd decision to have your AoE Master Blaster character act like a sniper, yet can't live up to it. Personally, I see Maika as a proof of concept for hard-hitting sniper characters later on, and also their contingencies. Maika's cycle time for another rocket is not very fast, so following up is not recommended. You hit, and you run. The slow cycle time means crits are not going to happen unless you specifically have raised up the rate for her substantially. It's why her signature weapon in the gacha has a huge boost to her critical rate on basic attacks. If you have raised up the critical rate enough, you can actually go run her crit damage boosting SR weapon. That weapon right there is where a lot of her damage comes from. And I mean, that can't be it for her basic attack, right? Wrong. She has a two-part Taimanin art. Not two of them, but two pieces that work together. Taimanin art Pyro is what we'll look at first. Pyro allows Maika to charge her shots and also give her a defense boost at the same time, alongside super armor during the skill itself. Very straightforward art, and is a hold system similar to Murasaki's. Taimanin art Crimson Lotus is the other half. By pressing the attack after firing, you can do a volley depending on the level of charge you just did. Here's how the combo works. First stage is tap the button once and then tap it again. It's one shot, then two more shots to follow. The second stage is hold the button for a moment, let go, then tap again to fire a medium blast, then a series of small fast shells. Third stage, you hold the button even longer until flames appear around her, let go, then tap the button again for a large blast, followed by a massive explosion. It's a big gamble if you're going to crit with these, especially that third stage blast. When they crit, nothing survives. When they don't, you just do okay damage. It's a very risk-reward oriented skill. Not to mention that Maika's flames around her, when she's in a level 3 charge, also do damage, so she has that little bit more protection inside. The fact that this is two parts to something that should be one feels like they needed to fill up her roster, or if it was just one skill, it would have been too strong. Maika innately should be able to charge her shots, regardless of Taimanin art or not. Her definitive Taimanin art should have been the follow-up shot series or something else. Also, the fact that Lotus is a second skill means it naturally doesn't get super armor like Pyro does. You need to have a green supporter equipped. I never take these skills because it always takes up half or 2/3 of my skill slots for minimal value. Unless it's for some sort of challenge or showcase, the one shot on her basic attack will suffice. What makes up for such an odd art is the rest of her skills. Maika's skills are primarily offense oriented and are to get her in and out, as a contingency, or a combo setup. Let's look at some of her most useful and important ones. To start us off, we'll look at Carpet Bombing. Carpet is an extreme dodge skill that shells a large area for 4 seconds. This attack also centers on wherever the attacker was, so it allows for Maika to chip from extreme distances. Great armor buster, and works well with the Ruthless Explosion and Incendiary Rounds. Works in all colors as a very safe way of getting damage going and preventing armor from regenerating on harder enemies. At max skill cooldown, it goes to 8.4 seconds. You'll be seeing this skill very often, and it lasts for half the cooldown, so you can get a lot of damage going. Next up is Ruthless Explosion. It allows for Maika to dodge and then give an attack to take the heat off her or start doing setup. The flame band moves quite slowly, which gives it ample chances to hit, especially in red, where it gives a 30% defense down on the first hit, so it does a huge amount of damage afterwards. The flames travel very far, so on occasion it will hit enemies in the back, saving you from possible gunshots. This, in conjunction with Carpet Bombing, will shred armor and keep enemies held in place, which is important for the next skill we're going to look at. Incendiary Rounds is a very powerful skill. It does so much all in one single hold. It has a high-speed projectile, a large round, damage over time, defense down on a crowd, and critical damage. Firing this skill one time will do severe damage to whoever gets hit by it. This is also her signature green skill, which means it's home to all the crit damage and all the crit rate boosters. So when it does make a crit, it's going to hit extremely hard. If the skill misses and hits a wall, it will not drop the fire on the ground, unfortunately. To make sure this doesn't miss and you get the full length of the damage over time, I recommend getting enemy armor broken through Ruthless Explosion, carpet bombing, or both. It really makes the best out of your damage cascades with it. Maika gets to turn into a full missile battery with Death from Above, her signature red skill. This skill fights for usage with Incendiary Rounds because of its usage and bursting power. Death from Above allows Maika to fire and forget, since this has a ton of projectiles that have strong homing capabilities. Not only that, they have such an innately high critical rate, Maika can just stack critical damage for very strong bursts. The projectiles themselves don't have very high base damage, so that is why they have such a great innate crit rate. It's a fantastic skill in conjunction with Momochi weapons, since the first few crits will cap defense down. This is also a fantastic mobbing skill, since it finds all the enemies. At max skill cooldown, this skill sits at 8.4 seconds. Keep it piping hot and always on cooldown. The massive amount of projectiles make this prime for getting particles with Maika, no boosts required. Those were Maika's best skills. Even with no boosts or one supporter behind them, they're absolute powerhouses. You can run other sets and just run those skills by themselves, just like Sakura. Now we get into skills that are situational. Pile Flare starts us off by being the definition of a hit and run move. This move is primarily used to give Maika buffs and hopefully deal damage. I say hopefully because if you're not within Maika's corrective hop radius, she'll miss. The explosion can catch, but don't rely on it as a main damage skill. Since this skill can go down to 7 seconds for cooldown, you can effectively have the buffs permanently on because they last for 10 seconds. If you have the 4th skill slot, this is a good pick. If you don't, this can be swapped in place for Ruthless Explosion. Grenade Launcher is another situational skill for sure. It's her other extreme dodge skill and is not as strong or as helpful as carpet bombing. It spawns a launcher off of her position, and this launcher is counted as a familiar, similar to Sakura's animals. This means it gets almost no damage bonuses outside of very few supporters and formations. It fires at the same rate as her basic attack with the same projectile speed, meaning far away enemies can just walk away from a rocket. This is not a good skill in the slightest. Other supporter skills can give slows or crowd control, this can't even do that. Explosive Rounds is the contrary to Grenade Launcher. It's a good situational and very useful. Explosive Rounds is her close quarters contingency. She gets hit and then throws a bomb to deal great damage and apply debuffs. The bomb being its own projectile means it can go in deep if it needs to, because it's not an explosion that just happens in front of her. It just so happens that the grenade explodes a lot of the time in front of her. It can give speed down, groggy, or just make such a huge explosion combined with the high base damage that you're going to break some armor. It's a lovely situational. If you have the 4th slot, it's a perfect addition. Now, Maito Flare is a very annoying skill. By dashing twice, she plants herself on location and spews a large flamethrower at her enemies. The strength is there for sure, and it kills very quickly. Though when everything is dead, she still has to complete the entire animation. No way to get out of it early. If there are enemies outside of the range of the flames, they will go passive most of the time and make you sit there. If a boss gets out of groggy while you're still attacking, they'll run right into you and make you eat a ton of hits. Being tanky helps a lot with this skill, but also grouping up enemies. Supporters that suck up enemies are few and far between, so it's a lot of hurting to hopefully kill all of them in one usage. The inability to escape makes it the most annoying for sure. Maika's raw strength needs no introduction, meaning it's up to you to make the most out of this power. A lot of Maika is bolstering her critical hit rate and crit damage. Her naturally slow attack rate means you're going to need some sort of a boost there. She also needs some sort of crowd control to keep her enemies weak and, most importantly, together. So let's look at some supporters that make these work. In green, it's really straightforward. Saruga and Laura are incredibly important to making sure Maika crits. You can replace one for the other, but together they make something really special. There's also, of course, the wonderful Miss Kaoru. Combined with Maika's crit damage booster SR, when Maika crits, they will most likely die. Lacking those, green is also home to some strong active effects and other supporters. Kasahara Tatsumi's disarm is great. Yuna's invincibility and passives are an awesome choice for Maika. Akane's actives and passives are perfect for keeping the fight going. The list goes on in green. It's fantastic stuff. In red, there's a ton of support for Maika. She's got damage boost, specific type boost, crowd control, healing, covers just about everything. If I spent the time to tell you all the supporters that fit in there, I would be here all day. It's also the cheapest element to play since many of the SRs and Rs in red are very strong. Maika sadly can't make good usage out of the supporters that call for specifically suppressed characters, but she makes it work anyways. Red is also home to the wonderful Spica supporter, and the best thing about that is, a lot of these great supporters came from events. I call it the free-to-play element, and if you're a free-to-play Maika, it's the color for you. Blue is a special place for Maika. Maika herself is a protect element, so she gets access to those specific boosts. Blue though isn't so much about dealing monstrous damage, it's about being a tank. Maika already rolls around with a tank cannon, so giving her the same level of armor is easy in blue. Maika has so much innate defense in her skills that if she wants to roll around with something like 80% damage reduction and still do millions, it's easy. It's so safe, but doesn't do as much damage as green, but it's like going from a 1 minute clear to a 145. You'll live unless you're really speedrunning. Now for the final thoughts on this Gyaru gunner. Maika is a proof of concept for sniper characters, 100%. Grimmery has experimental characters like this so they can learn how to make slow or obtuse concepts work, like how Noah is for Shizuru's whipping and motions. Sniper characters usually have some sort of crowd control to make getting hits easier and also to reposition. Maika has some crowd control ability, but not any hard slows or strong stops. Maika must bring those with the supporter. Maika has limited crowd control with Death from Above, Ruthless, Explosive, and Incendiary. These have great AoE and apply some sort of effect. The Buyer's Remorse Hill is more like a mountain at the start, since Maika is incredibly weak and cumbersome to use. Life for Maika gets really good when the skill cooldown starts dropping. This sort of quandary with the basic attack shows how much as a player you rely on said attack. When it's bad, you really notice and it has the potential to ruin what otherwise is a great character. I understand the feeling when someone says stuff like, it gets good 10 hours in. That unfortunately is Maika. The situation is comparable to someone like Rin, who is immediately good, and Maika, who requires an hour of work to make great. It's that level of difference. Would I recommend Maika though? Yes, I most definitely would. Her skills and base damage are so strong, you can feed her anything at any level as a player, and she'll just tear it up. Farm an event with her and you'll be going from dragging her to her dragging you at 200 miles an hour for speed farming. But they've made her relentlessly thick, and that's a lock if I ever saw it. Like goddamn, she is huge and that is fantastic. I mean, you go get her if you like big cows that are not afraid of work, I'll tell you that much.
Oh lord, it wasn't that something. Thanks for coming on out and learning with your boy Hardcorn. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment too, because I love to hear from you guys and maybe get some ideas from where to go next. And as always, I'll see you next time.